Hi,
Okay.
everyone. Welcome back to Costume Co. And today I have an amazing guest here. His name is The Dragon. And we had the great fortune of meeting on Twitter as I meet a lot of my wonderful guests and colleagues. So, hello, The Dragon. How are you today?
Well, my screen name is The Dragon Demands.
The Dragon Demands. So, and what we'll do is I'm going to put I'll put your contacts in the description below so people can find you. But we met on Twitter. You're on Twitter.
And I have a YouTube channel.
And you have a YouTube channel, of course. So we're going to get to that as well. So, The Dragon. So I met you on Twitter. Actually, we were, I think it was somebody else's tweeting that we were kind of chatting with each other. And what happened was I found out that you actually were one of the people behind the Game of Thrones Wiki database. Is that the correct name for it?
The Game of Thrones Wiki, they recently started renaming Wikia to Fandom, powered by Wikia. I don't know what that means, but the Game of Thrones Wiki, and I'm one of a team of there's 4 head administrators.
Mm-hmm. So anyway, I was so fascinated by this because, of course, as you just told me, you are basically one of the main people who did the costumes Wikia, which I have used so many times. It's a great starting point for me when I'm about to do a video. So hats off to you, an amazing job. So tell me about that. Tell me how you got involved in all that.
Well, I want to be more modest about it, but just getting into preserving the knowledge on an online encyclopedia. Why is it costumes? That on Game of Thrones Wiki, there's this sub portion where it's the costumes section. And it's about 60,000 words long now, and it took me about half a year to write and research. And I in all humility, I conceive of it as just a database of everything Clapton ever said, Michelle Clapton. I just went through every interview she ever gave, both written and video, screen capped and hand scanned in their books that they put out. When they have a tie-in book where this is the only place they had that concept art that she drew of like a Cersei dress, I had to hand scan that. And I loaded it up into files, and I said, is so big, I can't do it incrementally. You can't just go, okay, let's have one page on the Cersei dress. They're all interrelated, and the ultimate thing I wrote goes by region. So there's one hub page. If you type costumes into Game of Thrones Wiki, it comes to this hub page explaining this was Clapton's approach to it, like an online book. This is the introduction chapter. And then due to length, because there's so much information, I split it up into the 7 Kingdoms page, and there's subheadings by each kingdom, then Beyond Westeros, Beyond the Wall, and I started branching out to a few major character ones. So if you go there, you'll see all the concept art we could find it. It's not perfect by my standards. It's as best I could do with limited resources. But it's got pretty much everything Clapton has ever publicly said about her thoughts and design process on the costumes in the show.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, you've got the major characters. So you've got Cersei. I remember this. You've got Dany, of course. You've got Sansa. I think you've got Brienne, who I haven't done yet.
Because she didn't really fit anywhere else. I probably should have put her under Stormlands, but I only singled them out because Clapton herself singled them out. And I didn't do one on Tyrion or Jon Snow yet, even though you've done videos on there and I plausibly could in the future. It's just she never had a video explaining. She's actually said at some points, I'm getting a poor network connection warning. Can you hear me?
No, I can totally hear you.
Okay. She says, when a character is feeling confident, they wear their house. Tyrion will wear a brighter shade of red when he's feeling good. And you can follow that from episode to episode. She didn't say it in a specific interview. I didn't make a Tyrion page yet. I probably will eventually. But all the other episode to episode work got in the way. But there's a Sansa page and a Marjorie page, which they're like your videos on Sansa and Marjorie, where they're saying she planned out how their look evolves from episode to the next.
Yes.
And it's really just supposed to be a database of Clapton's statements on things. I actually like your symbolism video, but I feel uncomfortable going, this must clearly mean that I try to cite things based on things she said.
No, absolutely. And you and I were talking about how I'm writing my book, and the book is going to be more like that too. So a lot of my, I wear some tinfoil hat, do some tinfoil hat theories just for fun. It's just sort of like I'm doing one right now. And it's interesting because, we looked at the pictures of the new season 8 today. You and I did, or you did. I know you did.
They're not that different from what we've already seen in the things.
Absolutely. Yeah. So it's funny, though, because I'm doing a video, a part 2 on symbolism. Again, very tinfoil hat stuff. And I'm sure, they would be like, no, that's not it, but just for fun. And one of the things that I was sort of riffing on was a little bit of like that zigzag pattern. We've been seeing the chevrons, the zigzags. And then I noticed that Dany doesn't have the zigzags in her new outfit, but Tyrion does. So I was like, oh, what does that mean? But anyway, it's just all fun. But the book is really more like what you do is quotes from Michelle. But honestly, I used your sources as a starting point because one of the things, if anybody ever wants to go to the database, it's so great, is you have the quotes from Michelle, and then you even link it back to the original source. So if they want to go and watch the video,
that's just basic citing, but yeah.
So, but a lot of people don't do that on YouTube. So if they wanted to go and back and watch like a video of Michelle talking the behind the scenes, they can totally do that. And, but also you've got lots of great pictures on there. And I love how you broke down the region. And it was interesting because I had one of my viewers, she had said, hey, Heidi, would you mind doing a regions of Game of Thrones? So I did a regions of Westeros, and then I ended up doing the regions of Essos. I haven't actually finished it. I have to do the Dothraki still. And then I sort of was using I used your framework. So it was really like the fact that you had all that set up.
This existed as just a set of Microsoft Word pages for months as I was writing it. And let me give us some more background.
Sure.
I'm not the only administrator. There are other administrators, and I don't want to toot my own horn too much, but I wrote this whole thing offline because I said it would be impossible to write piece by piece with other people editing it. That once it's on the wiki, people do update it, but I wrote the whole thing. It took half a year, and I posted it at the beginning of season 4. And I was updating it through season 4 and through season 5. But as you've noted with the Tarly costumes and the Dorne costumes, once Clapton left, there wasn't as much need to keep updating. There wasn't as much stuff, and they weren't making things of as high quality. So other people have really, and I'm grateful for them, keeping pace with the updates. But how many new costumes have we had since season 5 relative to this is what Marine looks like and having to pick apart this whole new region? Most of the work was already done by then.
Absolutely. And so for people who don't know what you're speaking of, Michelle Clapton left for a bit to do The Crown, and then an interim designer named April Ferry came in, and she didn't really have much to do. One of the looks that she did do that we believe she did, I'm speculating because she's never actually said it, is Sansa's Battle of the Bastards costume. Like that one, I'm pretty sure she did. But a lot of them, like you say, were carried over, right?
Yes, so everyone else has been doing that. It's at this point I've soured on them, and I'm looking forward to the prequel eras. And a lot of people we aren't paid to do this. People work on the wiki because they believe in it, and we're an angry bunch of frustrated people because the show is constantly changing things. We're fighting with each other. If I prefer this wording, but we're crazy and believe in what we're doing, so it's a labor of love.
Well,
you know when you're all working on a project.
Yeah, and you don't get paid.
Yeah, so a lot of people hit burnout after things are getting pretty silly and dragons flying to the wall and what the Dorne stuff. But a lot of people are coming back. I mean, in the past few weeks, just with more prequel news, people have been gone for like a year, inactive like me in the off season. We're drifting back and going, maybe we can try this again with a new show. And like a Star Trek where you have a show that kind of ends not that great, but it's a franchise. Another era will pop up, and I'm hoping more people come back for the prequel era.
Yeah. So what I was going to ask you then, so you don't get paid to do this, I'm assuming. This is all volunteer.
Absolutely not.
Yeah, and
we're the medieval monks preserving the knowledge so it doesn't get lost. Like some magazine interview Clapton did 3 years ago that no one would remember unless we wrote it down.
Yeah.
That sort of thing. So
yeah. Now, do you know if she's ever?
I am grateful that. Yeah.
Do you know if she's ever?
I'm really grateful that you're letting me come on here to talk at all. Just
what?
I made that thing. Sorry, I made the whole costumes database 5 years ago. And there's other sub things on it, like this is what plants and animals are like, this is what food is like. You make that in the vain hope that years from now, someone will use this information to write a book. Like, you are why I do this, that someone who is smarter than me and knows more about costuming than I do, this is a useful guide for someone that turned out to be you. That will write books on this for posterity to preserve the knowledge. Absolutely. And thank you so much for all your work.
The other thing I love too is how one of the things is I don't know if you and I have talked about this, but I'm not a book reader. I'm not a Game of Thrones book reader. I read books. I haven't read the series. I've read the first book actually, but I haven't read the series. So for me, it's also great because then you do what happens in the books. Now I'm not sure if that's you, but I love that. Like, so then when someone comes to me and says, well, what about the Torka or something? I'll be like, what? I don't know what that is. So I can
we really missed that they cut that out. It's called a tokar. And in Slaver's Bay, it's like a toga, like in Romans. And the whole point is it's all these wrapping layers. And the whole point of it is it's so complicated you can't do manual labor in it. Okay. That you have to use both hands just to hold it on to keep falling apart. And they go, oh, we did that on purpose. It's only worn by the wealthy. That why would I need to use my hands to work? And it's this infamous one of the big, like you were to name 5 things Slaver's Bay is known for. It's well, the slavers wear tokars to show they don't work. And I'm surprised she didn't put that in the show on some level. But I still like the look she gave for Slaver's Bay, but
she did. Yeah, so she did do some kind of version of it, like where she's got everything is like wrapped around the body, but then she's got it like them going through like rings and things like that, and then knotted and.
The costumes, it's fun in a book, but like the Slaver's Bay costumes, they have like hair that's stylized to look like horns with oil. And some of them walk on stilts. It's supposed to look like they're these absurd aristocrats, and there's no way that could work on TV. They had to simplify that.
Yeah, the mind of George R. R. Martin.
No, it's fun.
He's got an amazing. He's so creative, and she has stated that, right? And you know this. That she stated that, like, there's some things like the guards, like the King's Guard. She changed those. She changed the what do you call them? The Dany's army, the Unsullied. So there were some things that she did change.
I like that she put her foot down and said, we're not doing Karth dresses from the novels.
Is that where, like, they're topless?
Well, so, there's cultures that don't have toplessness taboo, and they have dresses that leave one breast exposed. And she put her foot down and said, we are not doing that. It would distract the audience in a drawn-out scene. You just can't do that for like a crowd of people. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, like in Greece they did that. In Crete, like
like Minoan and Crete. You could do that, but you wouldn't.
Yeah, exactly. I think it would be distracting. Well, I mean, I've even had some issues. Like there was like assless Dany. Like I was like, I don't know about that. Like she apparently did that to shock Dave and Dan, though.
Well, as a joke with prostitutes, you can kind of do. I thought that was funny, but the big thing so when you're writing your book, I wanted to apologize to you that I can only make a database of what she said. And I told you this in tweets. She didn't say anything about, well, what's the design idea for the Stormlands or the Vale, even though they've been in since season 1. And the Vale, they look kind of like falcons with the long arms. There must be some thought in there. Yeah, this isn't something they dashed off in season 5. It was in since season 1. But I have this mountain of notes on her saying this is the thought that went into the Lannisters or the Tyrells, and Stormlands, Vale, and a lot of Essos, no details on, and there's nothing to say. Yeah, I've tried emailing her. I actually managed to get a response from Michelle Carragher, who just politely said, we don't do interviews like that. That, I told them, look, I already have a database. It's huge. I'm not some random person. And I just want to ask, hey, can you do an interview just saying what is your design philosophy on the Vale? But They didn't write me back. I don't know if you've tried to contact them for like a forward to your book or something.
I did actually. I contacted both of them, and for Michelle, I heard back from her. Mine was more with permission, so I got a nice response from Michelle Carragher. I heard she's one of my friends is actually knows her, and then it's just over rights, and basically HBO owns everything, right? They own They own all of their illustrations, all of their renderings. So they're not allowed to. So that's why I hired an artist. I think I told you that I hired an artist to do all of the drawings for me. So it's going to be an illustrated guide. So I have a friend named Patrick who's doing all the illustrations. There's going to be like 170, I think. It's a lot. So it's going to be just sort of like an encyclopedia, kind of like what you're doing, just, A to Z, like, this is this costume and this costume in order. And that's how I'm doing it. And then I'm throwing in a little bit of historical, like, medieval, like we were just chatting that you are. Well, so tell me, what's your education again?
I have a master's degree in medieval history, and I mostly focus on aristocratic women who ruled as regents over various counties and duchies in northern France.
That's amazing.
And women in political power, because all the men were off on the Crusades, so all the women were ruling as regents. Mm-hmm. And I don't know much about costuming. I know that, trade routes carrying... because France is between the Low Countries where all the textiles are and Italy where all the dyes are, color dyes. So a big part of my thing is a big source of money was these trade fairs where the color dyers from the South meet the textile people from the North. But I'm going over tax records for the costumes and cloth, not what it's done with. Like England was famous for its wealth was built on wool. I'm reading stuff in Latin on the wool industry, not how it was turned into a costume. Mm-hmm. I don't know that much about that. And I know less about it than you know about working with metal forging for armor. I don't.
Yes, I actually had an armorer come on a couple of weeks ago. His name's Red Wolf. He also has a channel. And he's kind of like Scola Gladiatoria. I don't know if you know him or the guy from New Zealand, those guys. So it was so fun because I'm really fascinated with armor, especially medieval armor and weapons, but I don't have a background in it. So I'm always like so psyched to talk to somebody about it, And this is what's been interesting because, of course, with Game of Thrones, there's a lot of armor in it. So I oftentimes just have to look at museum pictures and just, go online and do research on that. And my background's theater, actually. I don't even have, I'm not an academic. I always tell people this. Hey, I'm not an academic. I just have a really keen interest in costumes and historical costumes. So this is just like you. It's like a labor of love. We don't get paid really much to do YouTube, as you know, right? So
oh no,
this is just it's just it's kind of a labor of love, like you mentioned. And if we meet other people along the way who are also super keen on it, it's just like the best thing in the world. So.
Yeah. Some other points because I want to move on to the exciting prequel stuff. So that's what the database is. I'm just watching your videos. I'm so happy this was put to good use by someone. It's not just, I might as well have buried it in a hole. No one's using it. Wow, someone's using all this info. I'd like it.
You must be able to track it. I can't. You must get thousands and thousands of views on there.
There's a tool that lets you see views, but most people get there by Google. So the top pages are like main cast pages like Jon Snow or Daenerys. Mm-hmm. And everything's a mess because we kind of hit burnout after season 5, much as Michelle Clapton did, and hope is returned with the prequels, so we're probably going to start fixing everything in coming months. But other points I wanted to get to quickly. Like I said, there's some regions we don't have notes on. So if you're doing the rest of Essos, we do have a lot of notes on the Dothraki and on Karth, her version of Karth. But the free cities are huge in the books. There's 9 of them. Each one is a distinct culture. And other than Braavos, she really only scratched the surface. Slaver's Bay, I'm surprised you managed to get a full video on because I don't have a lot of quotes from her.
Yeah.
But the rest of Essos, you should have. There's a fair amount of information in our Dothraki section. A lot of it's stuff you already put into the Daenerys video, showing how she uses the lizard skin top and all of that to show a transitional thing. So other stuff.
And I want to mention to you this as well, like, and that, and I've had people comment. I'm sure you've had this too. I have people who watch, say, an older video. Like, for instance, I have a video on Sansa that's like 2 years old, and I had someone comment on it the other day. And what I do, and I know you guys do this too, is as you learn more information, you add that in, right? So I try to, like, say, oh, I got that wrong, but I'm doing a new video. Like, for instance, as an example, when I first saw Sansa's brooches that she wears on her dress, I thought they were just dragonflies. But then actually it was through a Redditor that someone said, no, I think those are actually weirwood keys, like the seed pods that drop off the tree. So I looked at it and I'm like, oh my gosh, I think that's true.
Oh, crud.
Yeah.
They were weirwood seeds?
Yeah.
I did not know that.
Yeah, so if you look closely at them, because she does have a lot of nature in her clothing, right? So someone the other day said, made a comment about that. And I said, this is an old video, but as I learn, like as I go along, and I'm like, oh yeah, that actually makes sense. So like one of the things was, the biggest question I get all the time is about Sansa's pendant. And you said you watched my symbolism one. So the first thing I'd seen was about like you had said it was symbolic of a wedding ring, which
I had to guess.
Yeah, no, but you know what? That's actually that's actually a pretty good. I think it's a pretty good guess, because when I was researching symbolism, the circle is a symbol of a wedding ring, and it's feminine and the moon and all that type of thing. And her more recent one is like that. I haven't quite figured it out. I'm hoping it'll kind of come to me. But
I thought it was something, Clapton said something about, because a woman's powers that in making marriage alliances, she makes political alliances. So I'd have to check it. I just guessed that.
So I saw that, but then I'm in a Redditor group, and this is where I get some of my ideas, Reddit, and someone said that it looked like the moon door. And I'm like, oh my God, that's an amazing observation. It does kind of look like the moon door. And then other people were saying, I don't know if you've watched, there's another channel. They said it looked kind of like Fi, so it's one of those things, like I'm kind of, a lot of times I'm not necessarily rigid in my idea about something. I like to think that I am open-minded to changing it as I get more information. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, because I tend to be set in my ways, and then someone demonstrably proves I'm wrong, and then I feel really bad about it. But there's two quick points I want to get through before I go to the prequel stuff.
Absolutely.
Just so I don't keep you for long. Like I was saying, stuff we don't have a lot of information on. What was the old Targaryen style? And you've seen this if you've read the thing. I talk about the old Targaryen style.
Yes.
That since season 1, when she said, oh yeah, that Viserys dresses like the Targaryens used to dress because he's old enough to remember what the old royal court looked like. And she never said exactly what that was. And then season 5, where we had our first flashback, and we see Cersei's friend doesn't dress like her. You've noticed that in your videos, Melara Heatherspoon. Yeah. And what I kind of wonder, because people are pointing out, you have the Lannisters dressed like they're Japanese, the Japanese samurai armor, which, it's a fantasy. It can look like anything. It's this mishmash of things. Like Dorne, in the books, they say it's a mashup of Spain and Wales in England.
Really? That's interesting.
No, like they have Welsh names. Well, if Westeros is Britain, they're kind of like the holdout Welsh princes that didn't want to unify. Mm-hmm. So, and they're mountainous, so it's hard to conquer them. So, Oberyn, Trystane, these are Welsh names. And he said, well, it's sort of a mashup of, who would think of mashing up medieval Spain and Wales? So, other stuff where they mashed it up. So, I'm walking your viewers through the theory here. I mean, you've read it already, sorry. It's when you look at the way Cersei used to dress, and you take into account what she calls the trickle-down effect, that the bannermen dress like the king, and it's a little distorted from how the king dresses, and even the prostitutes, it's, well, Cersei wears gold belts, we'll wear a rope belt and kind of imitate her. The theory I kind of came up with is that what if when the Lannisters were working for the Targaryens, they started imitating the Targaryens, and that's why the Lannisters look kind of Asian. And the Targaryens look Asian to show they're not from Westeros.
I totally agree with you on this. I totally agree.
What really hit me was when you look at Millar.
I read what you had written, and I was like, oh, I don't know. And then I started thinking about it, and then when I looked at Catelyn Stark's sister, the crazy one, Lysa Arryn. So there's this one scene where she's like just kind of comforting her son, and she's wearing a robe that looks very Asian, like very King's Landing. And I'm thinking, well, that's obviously not, her. She would have probably have started dressing like that in King's Landing, and so it made sense to me that if the Lannisters were in King's Landing and under the original, Targaryen guard or rule, that they would have picked up their silhouettes.
Yeah, so just the idea that this was the first, it hit me with the Melara thing, that this was the first flashback we ever had. It hit me that fashion changes decade by decade, that when we have prequels, even ones in Westeros, they probably wouldn't look the same. So that, that's what the Westerlands used to look like before Cersei. I don't know if watching a TV show you could pick up on that Cersei wanted to marry Rhaegar.
Yes.
That, like, in an alternate universe, she might have been Jon Snow's mom if it weren't for all that meddling. That she said, will I marry the prince? She's talking about Prince Rhaegar in that flashback. But that's probably I'm nervous about theorizing that I'm uncomfortable with this, that, maybe this is because it's the trickle down that the Lannisters dress like a Targaryen. It seems logical. Yeah. But when I tried to, email Carragher and Clapton, this was the top of my list of questions was, are the Lannisters like that because they're imitating the Targaryens? And that was one of the biggest things I was going to ask about. Yeah. So it's an interesting theory, but unproven.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. Like, what happens with me a lot of the time is a lot of it is observational, right? You take what she says, you know that's like canon, I guess. Or, if the producers say it, it's pretty much canon. But then if anything above that is just speculation. And I get fans who come up with really highfalutin stuff. And I'm like, okay, this is really reaching. But, it's up to you. You're entitled to interpret that as you want. I don't know that that's true. But because I've been watching it so much now and following it, I do notice that I am sort of able to see it a little bit from her point of view. So, but yeah, I know it's too bad that some of them, when she gives an interview, it tends to be very surface level, and I always wish it could be a little bit deeper. It would have been.
It's always about what's Jon Snow's coat like, and not, hey, what was your design philosophy for the veil? But Martin runs into that problem. He goes, every damn convention I do, people ask, who's your favorite characters? And I go, Tyrion and Arya. Haven't you Googled the last time I gave a public interview?
Yeah, I know.
This is 20 years. He said, I give the same answers. How do you ask the same? Before season 6, it was always, who is Jon Snow's mother? And what, you think I'm going to tell you in a live convention?
Yeah. I'm hoping that maybe that Clapton or they'll write a book or whatever. I know that there is a book in the works because when I did contact HBO, or because I contacted HBO as well. That's the other thing. They told me there is another book in the works, which was why they couldn't give me the rights. So that's why I chose to do it sort of the way I'm doing. So mine is more, going to be for people who do cosplaying and just are just generally interested in the observations. Also, I do have a lot of the fabrics. So I was able to track down a lot of the fabrics. That's something I was really, really happy with. And the companies who make the fabric or supply the fabrics have been very generous to cosplayers and people in the community. So, and also Michelle Clapton, in a lot of ways, she's been very generous with her information about how to do some of the techniques.
I've loved all of her work on the show.
It's great.
Even when people made fun of the burrito dress, she said it is supposed to look stupid in universe.
Yes.
I was just watching all your videos, the one where you were complaining about the worst costumes.
Yes.
Like the Tarly ones and the Dorne, you said a bold choice I disagree with isn't as bad as just plain sloppy. That wasn't being sloppy. She was trying to be weird.
Yeah.
Versus, and I have to comment, I don't know much about, last point here, I don't know much about costuming. And I liked and appreciated that they made the Tarleys different to show, like, the Reach is like France, and it's like the difference between northern and southern France, that they were different kingdoms for a long period. They hate each other. That, wow, the South doesn't dress like the Tyrells. And I didn't know any of these principles. I don't zoom in on things, but it was so informative. You're pointing out, if you look here, they didn't bother to press the dress well.
Yeah.
It doesn't fit her well because they clearly just pulled something off the rack and slapped it. These aren't details I would notice. And I encourage everyone, if you've come into this video from my channel, please check this out. These are not points I picked up on. Yeah, these really don't fit well, and they're very sloppy. And you think, you said you hated the Tarley stuff more than Dorne, and I realized, actually, they are terrible.
You know what? I got so much flack over that about the Tarleys. I had so many people.
No, I don't hate the design in principle. I hate that if you drew this as a cartoon, it's fine. It's the way they executed it.
Yeah.
As you were saying.
The funny thing is that the servants are actually really nicely made. The Tarley servants. So that's what I was trying to sort of say, like, well, they're supposed to, people are like, well, they don't have a lot of money, and the father's cheap, and I'm like, well, is this the subtext? Like, I mean, that's not actually in the story. Like, we don't, I mean, unless you've read the books, you might know that, but I'm always like, you shouldn't have to read the books to know what's going on there, right? Like, it's a TV show, so you should be able to tell the story through the TV show. And
people that excuse. I mean, your point where you go, well, maybe he isn't dressing well because he dresses functionally because he's a soldier and a hunter. Mm-hmm. That makes sense.
Yeah.
But beyond that,
I liked his costume.
This is like,
I like that, Charlie. And actually, Michelle changed it. Did you notice that? Yeah. Because that was April Ferry's design. So maybe she's a bit controlling. She changed it. And I actually liked it. I thought it was pretty good. They changed the actor, too, who played the son.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, so if anybody watches that video, you can be angry at me about the Tarleys. It's just my personal opinion. I always tell that to people.
Well,
it's my opinion.
It's as bad as the Dorne stuff when you think of just how sloppy was it.
The girls. Yeah, actually, so I'm doing a best men's costumes, and actually we have some of the men's Dorne costumes on the top list. Like Oberyn has amazing costumes in my opinion, and Tristane has a couple of really good ones as well. So they're going to probably be on that list.
So like I was saying, I don't know how costumes work. The whole reason I made this was just I went, wow, the other more developed wikis like Star Trek Wiki called Memory Alpha has a page on costumes. And like, this is what Starfleet uniforms are like. So, I don't know how to make like a Marjorie Tyrell dress. I don't even know the terminology. It started out as just, the start was watching her behind the scenes things from season 1 and going, wow, we should have a page saying that Lannisters wear more metal armor than Starks to show that they're wealthier than them. And it started out as military uniforms for the armies. And just while I was at it, I went, oh, yeah, and this is what the Stark women dress like. But it was really interesting. The more Clapton would explain, this is to show class structure. Like, that Catelyn will wear really high-quality wool collars, but everyone else makes do with cheap wool collars. There's gradations of class, of region. So I kept rounding it out to more of society as a whole, but it started out as just, wow, there's a Starfleet uniforms page, we should have that. And the kind of people that read these are of two kinds. People who are trying to build their own costumes, which is great, but I have no idea how to do it. It's like magic to me. And then people who are, as a fictional universe, I like knowing these story details. Like, I think of it as... if it sounds not humble to say, I hope writers use it as a guide. Star Wars writers go on to the Star Wars Wiki to check details, like this is how many windows the Millennium Falcon has. Or Star Trek Wiki, they have interviews with the writers who come on saying, we read you guys articles on like, this is how proton torpedoes work to make sure we get it right. So you make this hoping, or if someone's making a fanfic,
yeah, I was going to say, that would be a really great resource for fans.
No, it's just as a guide to the fictional universe is how I'm approaching it, though I imagine it really helps people trying to build these things physically. It's a different world from what I'm used to.
Yeah,
so that's how that came to be.
For me, I found that what really helped me is a lot of the times the show or at least at the beginning, like I was sort of like overwhelmed by all the different houses and sigils and, you know, banners and their mottos. So just to have a place to go, a resource where I could kind of like, okay, this is what they are, and this is their colors, and this is what their banner looks like.
But so much of this started with the book fan sites, which are a lot more, you know, I started on the book fan sites. They're a lot more developed than this, but visually, you know, because costumes are visual, we needed a database.
Mm-hmm. So, do you want to say anything else about that before we move on?
Yeah, the other thing was just, I'm trying to be humble here, that I'm not the best at this. It's just, it was cool to make a database of everything Clapton ever said.
Yes.
Last thing I want to say on that is I like Michelle Clapton and the world building she put into this. And, you know, when we fans obsess over things, you get out what you put in. And if someone put a year's worth of work and thought into something, you spend a year picking it apart versus, oh yeah, that's just some Tarly stuff we slapped together, or we slapped together season 5 Dorne. It's not worth picking apart because they didn't put anything into it. So,
yeah, I mean, this is one of the things when, like, I did the one, like, you know, the worst costumes, which is, you know, fairly harsh.
Which is a great watch, you know, but it's pointing these things out.
And it is kind of harsh, but honestly,
it's based on quotes Clapton gave.
But honestly, it was difficult to even get 10. Like, I had a hard time with it. I mean, one of the things that when I had Red Wolf on talking about the armor, some of the armor, which I don't have as much of a knowledge base about, but some of the armor, you know, you're like, well, that's kind of might be a bit silly. You know, I picked on the Dorne armor, but some of the other armor in a battlefield, would that actually work? Or, you know, the fact that they don't wear surcoats, for instance, that's one of the things that Red Wolf said to me. And I'm like, oh, I didn't even realize that's such a cool thing. I didn't even think they would have a surcoat and why they would have a surcoat and all this type of thing. But honestly, like, I think she did such a great job. She had so many regions to have to tackle. And one of the things that I love the most about it is she just has so many textures and layers involved. Like, you know, it's just not, like you say, she could have just slapped together something armor-wise. And Simon Brindle, who did the armor, of course, is, you know, does an amazing job. I think I'm saying it correctly if I'm not.
Dear God, Carragher and the embroidery. I didn't know you could put that much meaning into embroidery. Just the dragon scale texture thing. You could do that?
It's nuts. Yeah, and my friend Romy, who's come on the show, actually, she's been actually teaching me a bit about embroidery, because I asked her, I said, hey, would you mind, like, looking at the embroidery and helping me analyze it more? And so I'm learning about embroidery, like stump work, which is like when they build it up, like, really high. You know, like, it's actually, like, textured. It's, you know, not like, you know, I always used to think of embroidery as being flat, but this isn't flat, right? You've got all the beading, and it's all built up, and it's like, it's almost like scales, like armor itself, right? So it's very cool. And then I can't even imagine what her eyes are like. It must just be like, you know, her eyes and her fingers just must be like, you know, get twisted, arthritic or something. I don't know. I'm just trying to imagine her working like hours and hours at that.
Yes, so I like Clapton, and I felt really bad when she left the show. Mm-hmm. And as you said in your thing, I don't knock April Ferry. She worked on HBO's Rome. It's just, I don't think it's the costume department's fault at all. No, it's the production department is putting absurd demands on them. And I don't think anyone could, you know, a lot of these failures of, like, Dorne, for example, that's all on Clapton. That was before Ferry joined.
Yeah.
So let's focus on that. I stopped updating the costumes thing as regularly after season 5. Like 90% of what we saw was already on screen by then. So if you're looking for more recent stuff, it's not as thorough as it used to be, and I'm going to have a catch-up at some point. And we're looking forward to the prequel era. We'll get a lot more activity.
I'll just give you my notes, and then if you're welcome to use them.
I'm watching your videos. They're great, but it's, you know, you've done better stuff than I ever could. But point is, we don't know exactly why Clapton left. Yes, it was for the Crown, but did she leave and then go to the Crown? Or I don't think she was having a good work relationship with the showrunners anymore.
Well, you know, it's interesting.
Just from the things you said in the the quotes you yourself said about how miserable she was doing Dorne, and I had that on show. You know that Dorne was a last-minute idea. That originally they weren't even going to do it. Did you know that?
No, I see. I did not know that.
Okay, you didn't know that. And
you mean on the show? Or
on the show.
Oh, see, I didn't know that. That puts things in perspective.
Okay, they asked her to make 25 separate sets of costumes, and all of Dorne very much at the last minute, the definition of last minute or 11th hour. And she was just, I don't think you could reasonably ask a person to do that. And I suspect that her relationship with them soured. But she keeps coming back to do one or two hero costumes like Cersei's dress because, you know, like us, why are we still even following? So we believe in it. It's something she put all of herself into. And I feel sorry for her. But to give you the short version, back when I was starting my YouTube channel, I do behind-the-scenes videos on. I actually sit down with the wiki and research. Why do I think this Stannis storyline is different from the books?
Sure.
I go and, like with Clapton, I research all the creator statements, and it's like people want them to succeed, and they are utterly unqualified, and we're really putting a positive spin on their abilities. And like, there's videos like on my channel of them going, word for word, we lied to Martin that we were qualified to run a TV show and we didn't. But we learned as we went, and no, you really didn't.
Sort of fake it till you make it kind of thing?
A lot of people, I haven't seen it yet, but have you heard about that Fire Festival thing?
No, you mean Burning Man?
No, Fire Festival was that disastrous festival that happened in the Bahamas where some con man ran a thing and he kept faking his way through.
Yes.
I haven't even seen that, but people keep saying everything you're telling us reminds us of what the quotes, actual quotes, when you see not HBO promotional videos, but Benioff laughing, I didn't know how cameras work when I started this, and I lied and said I did. That we're being sold a narrative that he's this auteur, great writer, and I'm not talking about even story decisions, just basic production coordination. They really don't know what they're doing. And it's not just, the abstraction of that. It's on a personal level. This was a deep betrayal to all of the hardworking production staff that you yourself have worked in theater. You know you need a schedule. You have to have dates when you are building things, and it's not a matter of budget anymore, but of time.
Yeah.
That you can't reasonably ask a theater costumer, make that whole other kingdom in 25 more costumes by tomorrow, and you're like, that's physically impossible. And people make excuses for them like, oh no, there was a reason for that. How could they have known? Well, because Clapton was telling them, I'm the costume department head, don't do this. And this is all other aspects of Dorne, like the directors are telling him don't do this, but I started in the middle there because I got excited. The point is, when I was starting my YouTube channel, I started with the low-hanging fruit of why Dorne failed, and it's just me going through. Not just this is what I hated about it.
I have to watch those. I'm going to go back and watch the videos. Behind
the scenes, it's like over a year of hour-long documentaries going, these are things the production staff actually said with cited quotes on why this failed, and other things like, you know how silly it was they had a fight scene during the day? People mock that.
Yes.
It's just, and Cogman would even be going, well, what choice do we have? The museum would only let us film in the day. You've seen a lot of film in your channel. Most fight scenes aren't actually filmed in the dead of darkest night. They use something called a day for night filter.
Yeah.
You know, that they film it in blue light and go, the audience understands this is night. And this is like a basic filmmaking thing. If you realize we don't actually film fight scenes at night.
Yeah.
We film on set and darken it. Because, you know, like when you're taking film with your iPhone, you can't brighten something that's filmed in the dark. You darken something that's filmed in the light.
Yes.
That's how light works. And it's just, how amateurish they were. That between Benioff, Weiss, and Cogman, none of them have a screenwriting degree. None of them have prior mainstream TV experience. And they're basically just novelists who were moonlighting as script doctors and managed to fake their way into this. And it would take too long to explain, but point is, my earliest video where I went, this is going for, it'll be easy to prove why Dorne is a disaster. People already think that.
What was the response, though? What was the response?
You know, it was great. It's got like 50,000 views, but I must warn your viewers that if you link to this, the audio is very poor because it's on my older laptop, which I got rid of since then.
Okay.
It's longer than it needs to be because I was starting, and I knew I'll cut my teeth on this and get better as I go. So it's the Dorne one, but I split it into two halves. It's like 3 hours long. First half is story things of they just really wanted to do this, and it's not for Dorne, it's for showing off the Deer of Armas and the cast and showing off this castle. if you want to link to one, please link directly to the second part, and it skips over 2 hours of other stuff.
Sure.
The second part is purely production stuff, and it's, there's a ton of videos out there going, Dorne is bad. I'm saying this is why it's bad. Like, I linked to another YouTuber who analyzes fight scenes, Ars Gladiatoria.
Yes.
Who points out, this is actually a well-performed fight scene. Like, they clearly do know how to use these weapons, but it's terribly filmed. They're like, you don't film in a wide shot. And they said, well, we couldn't move the camera closer because we couldn't fit it into the castle. Then don't film in a castle. Things like that. Of like,
Was that Brian Cogman again?
No, Cogman is not. He's not on our side on this. This was my point is, over the years, reports have been trickling out from upset directors and production staff that these guys have no idea what they're doing, routinely ignore direct warnings that this is physically impossible. And that is, Dorne looks and feels like a rough draft, rushed, last-minute idea, because it is a rushed, last-minute idea. That when they were making Season 4, they didn't know they were going to Dorne in Season 5. And because of production overlap, like at the last minute, they went, hey, let's go to Dorne. And they're like, and Clapton and all the directors were, this is well beyond the end date where you can start a new subplot that's 40 minutes long.
Yeah, no, I saw an interview with Clapton, though, where she said she was looking forward to doing Dorne, though.
Well, because she liked Dorne in Season 4. She was looking forward to it if she had enough time. Well, when they were starting, they're like, but we'll get through it with grit and gumption. Fans were looking forward to Dorne because when you hit the cold reality, we don't have time to do this. I have a lot of these videos. The ones that are probably the best ones, because they have like 200,000 views at this point, is the Stannis one explaining that they just get, wow, we have to show off that actor. Drop everything else and make a new storyline about this. And we're like a theater customer, there isn't time to do that.
Yeah.
But the big one in terms of production, not so much costuming, is the Battle of the Bastards one, where the director actually would go on and tell them, they kept insisting, we'll film it with 70 live horses and have them running into each other. And he's like, that would harm the horses. That is illegal. Mm-hmm. Or, and they went, okay, but we'll do it in such a way that it's charged with 70 live horses and they're all dying in a row. Film it in 2 weeks. And he'd be telling them, I am the horse guy. A horse can't learn that in less than 6 weeks. Mm-hmm. This isn't a matter of money. And they just ignored him.
Sure.
And the craziest part is so much like Donald Trump. I hate to use that analogy, but keep in mind, David Benioff is the son of a Wall Street banker.
Oh, I didn't know that.
He's he's son of the former head of Goldman Sachs.
Oh,
so
my God,
you get the feeling of that world of blustering through with no deadlines, and it's someone else's fault.
Yeah.
The point is, when he was trying to tell them, I don't like making that comparison. Like, it's the whole beefing himself up as, I'm so great, I'm the greatest, always the superlatives, I'm the best at everything, when, no, you really don't understand how costuming takes time or production. That the horse guys were telling them, a horse can't learn to do that in less than 6 weeks. Mm-hmm. And there came a point, this is a public interview, I'm citing it, where Sapochnik kept telling them, this will take 48 days to film, not the 21 you have budgeted for it. And they just it's like they're in another world. They go, hey, we'll find a way. We're amazing. And they actually, Benioff Weiss would write up schedule sheets. And I'm not saying this articulately because it's off the top of my head, but it's in my video, where they handed in what they thought the time they were allotting for was their timesheet to Sapochnik, the director. And he says this in a public interview. I'm sorry I built up to this so long. Are you still there?
Yes, I'm here.
Sorry. That he would like the Trump thing of people stealing things off his desk. That he just went behind their backs to Bernie Caulfield, one of the other production managers, and said, I am not going to bother to make my own schedule for this. This is not physically happening. That this takes 3 times as long to film this as they think it will. They're giving, or it's like that, stealing things off of the incompetent boss's desk to not harm people. I'm not even going to entertain this delusion. This will not take this long.
Yeah, it's like the guy who wrote the letter in the New York Times or whatever.
Yeah,
Washington Post saying they're working around Trump.
Not
so they're kind of working around him.
It's not my words. These are candid interviews where people actually do grumble that they're not the brilliant people they say they are. That just today, I mean, we're on Twitter saying there's this interview where they're talking about how we always listen to the VFX team, and no, we have. There's other points. Remember the zombie polar bear?
Yes.
Where they were laughing off, and the production team told us it was too late to start something that big, because that's really complicated with live actors and a big CGI construct. But what do they know? It's you asked them to do it pretty much a week before filming. That they're doing that constantly. They do not listen to. It's not even their story decisions are terrible. Most of the bad storylines in Game of Thrones, particularly later on, are things that ran overtime because they got so psyched up on we're these Oscar-winning great guys that they have no idea how the practical logistics of production work. When I like the way you put it in your video of as a theater person, you know, you have to beg it, borrow it, or steal it.
Yeah.
Like it's a different world for them. If they don't understand, there are physical limits to what you can do. And point is, Battle of the Bastards had a different ending, which they scrapped because it ran overtime.
Okay.
And they had to re-edit it. And so my point is, for your viewers, particularly for Clapton, link to why Dorne failed Part 2, where it's mostly reiterating wiki stuff that were in your things, but other production things of, I can never prove, and I don't want to slander, it's just, I don't think she just left for the crown. I think she was having a really terrible time.
Well, it's interesting, because when I originally saw an interview with her that she was just leaving.
Yeah, and that's the thing. They don't clearly say why she's leaving. She
never said why. And then the next thing I know, she was on The Crown, and I'm like, oh, she's on The Crown. Maybe that's why she left.
You know, it's like, you know, the memory hole, 1984. It's, they didn't say, I'm leaving for The Crown. It was like what you'd expect if someone was fighting and didn't want to talk about it.
Yeah, and the only quote the one quote I had from her is that she said, I feel that I've done all the worlds now. I've done all the worlds. She did. She covered all the kingdoms. I've covered all the worlds, and so I feel that I'm in a good place. I can leave. So when April Ferry picked it up, it's true, except for like we were mentioning the Charlies, but I don't think she had to create any other worlds.
I can't summarize this better than my rambling here. Please try to edit down. That your worst costumes video using my notes from her thing summarizes better than I can with my frail words.
That this Charlie stuff looks like it was slapped together at the last minute. You wonder why? Yeah. They have no sense of time.
Yeah, it's I have to say, like, as someone who has worked in a pressure cooker situation before, it's really overwhelming. Like, it is. For anybody who is not in a creative field, I don't work in the field now, but when I did, it is. It's very, very, there's a lot of pressure. And when production comes to you and says, we need to do this, and then you're like, but that's physically impossible, they're kind of like, and of course, a lot of times they say you have to do it, and you have to do it on budget. So it's just, it's crazy, right? So I'm not shocked at all that she's burnt out. In fact, like there's another series I cover called Outlander. The costume designer on that, I'm almost positive has left because of burnout, and she's being replaced.
Like even the production designer. I mean, Deborah Riley started in season 4. Gemma Jackson, who did the first 3 years, left because again she said there's just too much work in a day on this.
Yeah, and I mean, you're going to lose your life. Like, you're going to, you can't get that time back, right? Like, I know, for instance, Michelle Clapton left to do Mamma Mia, which I didn't even know she was doing that. And I think that was a blast for her, because she was just like, oh, my God, I can go and do something totally different. And same with The Crown, I suppose.
I have a ton of other videos, but if in the thing for this, link to the Dorne Part 2 and I guess the Battle of the Bastards, it's me talking about behind the scenes. My conclusion I'm trying to get to here to move on is I know that we're going from an abstract principle. This isn't what the books are like. You understand Dorne is amazing in the books. It's actually this really cool medieval Spain place. This isn't what the books are like. But it's not even as a books versus TV series. Like, people watching this as a TV series didn't like Dorne or didn't like dragons zipping back and forth to the wall in season 7. It's not a books versus TV series thing anymore. And it's on an abstract principle, it isn't art, but some people don't care about, this is not a principle. On a personal level, I feel that this was a betrayal of Clapton and all their hardworking production staff. They're not this happy family. They were deeply disloyal to their own subordinates. Mm-hmm. And, these are people who are I am the master carpenter. I know more about carpentry than you. And Benioff be telling him, no, I know more about carpentry than you. We will get this done quicker. Or, no, you can get costumes done that quickly. It's, you have literally no prior television experience, and I am an Emmy-winning costume designer. I know more than you. You should respect my authority and knowledge on this matter. And even as a friend, as a person, it was just so disloyal.
I have a feeling that one of the terms of her coming back is that they probably had to, give her some distance, give her some space. I have a feeling because I can tell that she's she's got her definite spin on it. Like, for instance, the white coat that Danny wears. That was all Clapton. She said they were not convinced of that. They were like, is that going to work? And she's like, no, it's absolutely going to work. And that it was everyone's favorite costume. That's the episode that won her other Emmy, like for season 7. So I think that's what's happened. They're just at the point now where they're like, let's just let her do what she wants. I mean, really, they should. They trust her. They trusted her enough.
Yeah.
For 5 seasons. So they should. No, sorry, did you want to talk about Empire of Ash, though?
Yes, and I don't know how much longer you can hold me on, because I've barely begun on the Empire of Ash stuff.
We can always do this as a 2-parter.
No, we'll pause, and then you'll do this as you feel. You should probably...
Okay.
I'm sorry if I was talking over you. I'm just trying to get to my point. I'm just rambling.
No, not at all.
There's reasons I have hours upon hours of documentaries that I made over the past 2 years on behind the scenes. This is reports we have from production staff on things are falling apart. These guys really don't know what they're doing, and they're being very inconsiderate to their hardworking production staff. I still respect Clapton, and I love Clapton, all the other hardworking, the armorers and the set designers.
Me too.
More so than the writers, and the prequels will come and we'll have a good time again. But with that note, intermission. Everyone go to the lobby and get yourselves a snack.